Good morning. It is the Nikki Maduro show, and Nikki Maduro, of course, off on a field trip, seeing a musical theater, children's musical theater. I think she said Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is where she is this morning, and it's one of those things that, as our kids get a little older, if you don't take the opportunity and do it, you miss that opportunity forever. So I'm very happy that she is off doing that today with her youngest son. I'm Kim McAllister in for Nikki Maduro today, and there is a big show coming up. First of all, John Rothman is here, and just off the air was why we're a touch late. We're talking about Hanukkah, what it means to people this year, and how maybe it may be celebrated a little bit differently. So we'll get into that. Also talk some politics with John Rothman because, of course, yesterday the charges came down for Hunter Biden. So we'll discuss that as well. Um, Also, Nikki's not here to give the 49ers preview of the weekend's games. So I brought in a professional to get that done. We'll talk to Rich Waloff today, not only about sports, but about becoming a new grandfather as well. So about his life and what he's been up to. And of course, it is Friday. So we'll talk movies with Tim Seika as well. So, like I said, good show coming up. But first, let's talk about Hunter Biden not paying his taxes. And whether you think if you or I had not paid our taxes, if we would be charged with 9 counts. I don't begrudge the government filing charges against someone who deserves to be charged, but I do want people to be treated the same. And I don't know if he's getting the heaviest book thrown at him because of who he is or not. So I'd like to bring on John Rothman to talk about that. And let's go ahead and do it right now because there's no time like the present to get some John Rothman right before we get to the weekend. John Rothman, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, hi. Woohoo.
May I
Used to the
say I
clapping
am
sound.
thrilled. I am thrilled that you are having Rich Waloff on.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite people. Tell Rich, congratulations on becoming a grandfather.
Yeah.
And I also want to extend my warmest good wishes to Tim Seika. What a great lineup. And Nikki may not be here, but thank heaven Kim McAllister is.
John Rothman, I just love you. I really do. And I just, with all the questions, for me at least, about Israel and Hamas fighting, and all the information I have coming at me from different angles, and every way that if you ask a question or you're uncertain about something or you're still trying to form your own opinion or trying to find out what it means, thank you for being a I know that you come at it from a certain perspective, and I appreciate that. But I also appreciate the fact that you don't get angry quickly at me and that you give me the space to kind of try to make my way to figure things out. Even though I might not understand the situation or we might come at it from a different angle or whatever, one of the things I love about you the most is that we have always been able to sit down and have a conversation where I walk away becoming richer for it.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Let's start before we get into Hanukkah and the menorah lighting in San Francisco last night, and how maybe things are different this time around. Let's talk about Hunter Biden first and jump into the politics because 9 counts, tax evasion, all kinds of serious business going on with Hunter Biden. And that wasn't the case originally, but the judge wouldn't accept the first plea agreement. So they went back and they looked at everything else, and now they've come out with what seems to me to be an extraordinarily harsh penalty for someone who has now paid their taxes. Right? The government got their money. And so isn't that the most important thing? Is it because of who he is that he's being penalized so harshly? Or is this just par for the course and this is what he's due?
The target is not Hunter Biden, who, as I have said repeatedly over the last several years, both on KGO and on various podcasts, he should be punished for what he did. But the target is not Hunter Biden. The target is Joe Biden. And everybody should understand, all you have to do is listen to a Sean Hannity or to any of the other right-wing talking heads, and you understand their goal is to get Joe Biden. Mark Levin says the same thing. Laura Ingraham, they're all in this together. And I've said you cannot hold the sins of the children against the father any more than you can the other way around. So let Hunter Biden face a court of law let him be judged by a fair, impartial jury. But what is going on in right-wing media now is an attempt to get Joe Biden. And they're very honest about it. They say, our goal is to nail the president. And when the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Johnson, talks about bringing impeachment charges against Joe Biden, you've got to wonder, what in the world is happening? Hunter Biden, by the way, was a drug addict. And those of you who have any experience with addiction or members of family with addiction, when you're in that situation, you don't do rational things. You do irrational things. You do stupid things. And should Joe Biden be held responsible for his son's errors? I don't think so. Now, there is a question of whether or not Joe Biden was involved in the business interests of his son.
Right.
That should be adjudicated, and Congress is looking into it. And the interesting thing, Kim, I really pay attention to what happens in the House. They've held hearings, the Republicans, saying they've got the evidence. They're going to nail it. And you know what? They never have. In fact, I think I was with either Nikki or Mark when a hearing took place, and they said, today, it's all going to be laid out, all the revelations, it'll be ironclad.
And it never
And
is.
at the end, there was nothing.
No, big fat zero.
Yep.
Over and over and over again. Even recently, right? I mean, even, is this what you're talking about? Because it seems like it's happened over and over and over again.
This is just a few months ago.
Yeah, with the truck payment.
Right.
Recently, I think it was last week, we have, documents saying that there are bank transactions. It turned out to be like $4,000 that Hunter Biden was paying his dad back for a loan for a truck.
I mean, this is the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be a major political issue. The people who want to make it an issue will make it an issue, will continue to do so. More interesting for me will be next Monday when Donald Trump, in a civil case, and I want to underline that, a civil case, not a criminal case, will be on the stand talking about whether he overinflated the values of his properties. And that is a serious question because it will affect whether or not his entire premise of being a great businessman was correct. But there's even a more important case coming up, and that is in Georgia, where Mike Pence, the former vice president of the United States, is going to be called as a witness on whether or not Donald Trump tried to directly interfere in the 2020 election. I mean, there are multiple things, but you know what's fascinating? What's fascinating to me is it's two different universes. Yeah. I can listen to Fox and get one completely different view of history, and then I can listen to CNN or MSNBC and look at a completely different sense of history.
Isn't that the craziest thing?
It's nuts. Where's Walter Cronkite or David Brinkley and Chet Huntley or Frank Reynolds when we need them, for heaven's sake?
It's like, what news do you want today? Not what is happening. It's what do I feel like is happening today for me and my political sensibilities. And that's not the way it should be. You can interpret news differently, but the actual facts don't change until now, until this age. And now apparently the facts are flexible.
Or they're preconceived. The goal of Sean Hannity, I listened carefully, particularly to Hannity, because I've always enjoyed listening to him. It is so one-sided. And by the way, did you hear the interview Hannity did with Donald Trump? He wants to be dictator for a day. Well, it's one thing to be a podcast host for a day, Kim McAllister, or another thing to be queen for a day, a show I always enjoyed as a kid. But to be a dictator for a day and to publicly say you're going to be a dictator. Now, somebody said, oh, he was just joking. I don't think so. January 6th proved that Donald Trump may have many faults, but a joker he's not. So I think that these are real issues. One other thing, and then I know you want to move on to some other subjects. I hope we'll talk about the abortion case in Texas because that to me is really powerful. But let me just indicate to you, when there is a moral equivalency drawn between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I am horrified. Yeah, everyone deserves their own day in court. If Joe Biden is guilty of something, and you've all heard me say this before, if Joe Biden is guilty of something, nail him. He deserves it. But if he's not, stop raising these nonsensical issues. And the same thing with Donald Trump.
But it works. I have a
Yeah.
friend who, completely logical, reasonable person, but says, you know, they're all crooked, because what she's hearing is this repeated message. You know, there's Hunter Biden and there's crime and he's somehow connected and this and that. So she's thinking, well, they're all crooked. Let's just start with a whole new slate because they're all crooked. But what's interesting is I was just reading a story about Republican senators, and the quote is on the top of the Huffington Post: "The cake is baked. That Republican senators believe Trump is a lock for the 2024 nomination." So,
And what a shame.
mhm.
I mean, this is a man who has 91 felony counts in indictments against him. This is a man whose own words that he would suspend the Constitution, I mean, you have to wonder. Look, I'm a historian, among other things. And when I think of the traditional Republican Party, this is not the party of Alf Landon, Wendell Willkie, Tom Dewey, Dwight Eisenhower, Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan, George Bush. It simply isn't legitimate. And it disturbs me because, and I've said it before, I'll say it very quickly, I want a vital, vibrant two-party system. I want to have a choice. I want to have an American political system that works. I'm willing to concede when Donald Trump does something right. The Abraham Accords, masterstroke. But when he does things wrong...
Didn't he also put money toward the COVID vaccine?
Yep. So these are all things that you have to balance, but you also have to have good judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be the real test for the American people. Imagine, Kim, all the great discussions we will have over the next 11 months. I can't wait.
I wish they weren't discussions where Trump's name is mentioned, or as Chris Christie called him, Voldemort, he who shall not be named, because it lowers the bar of the discussion, because it becomes about Trump and it becomes less about the issues and less about what the country needs to feel healthy and you know, not be so divided again. And here we go again with the anger. With
his people believe in him, Kim. And may I tell you, I learned a long time ago. I worked for Richard Nixon, and he was my hero. And I learned that even heroes have clay feet. And when I called for Nixon's resignation, which was very tough for me to do, I did it as an act of conscience. When I knew Nixon was wrong, I had no problem saying he was wrong. For the Trump people, it is virtually impossible for them to concede that Donald Trump is wrong. By the way, that applies to Joe Biden. If Joe Biden does something wrong, or Barack Obama did something wrong, two men I voted for, I don't mind saying it. It doesn't diminish my ability to vote for them if it's not a critical issue. But would I put someone in the White House who has talked about being a dictator on the first day and who talks about suspending the Constitution? And have you looked at the people he's talking about putting in power and weaponizing the Justice Department? I mean, it's horrific. And when will those who support Donald Trump understand? Let me be clear to those who are Trump supporters listening to you and me today.
Yeah.
If you support Trump on issues, fine. Let's go at it. But when we talk about him as a personality, as president of the United States, it's horrifying. May I use another example? Look what's happening in Texas. Here we have a woman who got pregnant. She was informed by her physician that her pregnancy would end in disaster for the baby, and if it were carried full term, she would not be able to have another child.
This is an unborn fetus. Of course, a fetus would be unborn, who was diagnosed with trisomy 18. If it doesn't die in the womb, when it's born, it will be a painful couple days, likely, before it dies outside the womb. There is no benefit to carrying this fetus. And the only thing I can say is, if I'm this woman, I'm getting out of Texas as fast as I can.
Okay, you understand, Kim.
Yes.
The court, a judge has said, yes, she can go ahead.
Right.
But
And
the
did you
Attorney
read?
General,
I was going to say, yes.
the Attorney General of the state, Ken Paxton, who was nearly impeached, just unbelievable, and who's a great defender of Donald Trump and the crooked election and so forth. Ken Paxton says he would prosecute the doctor if the doctor performed that medical procedure.
Yeah, he wants the hospitals and the doctors to ignore the judge's order, and he wants them to be aware that they could be held criminally responsible for helping this woman. And my question is that what they meant? Is that what they wanted when they outlawed abortion? Did they want a woman like this to be affected?
Yeah. Look, I just want to cut to the nub. If you are a Republican and you believe in freedom of choice, which is what Republicans claim, then let a woman choose. Barry Goldwater, Mr. Conservative, Mr. Republican, once said, I can use a vulgar word here, right?
Yeah,
he said they should kick the ass of these evangelicals right out of the doctor's office. And he was right. But where is the Republican who will stand up and say that today? Goldwater, Mr. Conservative, Mr. Republican, who said a woman should have the right to choose. By the way, who also stood up for gay rights. Barry Goldwater, who was a major general in the reserves, said, when I'm in a foxhole, I don't care what a person's sexual orientation is. I just want to know they can shoot straight.
That's right.
That's the kind of Republican I'd like to see today. Someone who can stand up and really stand for what Republicans should stand for.
This is what we're looking at, Ken Paxton. This is the man who would have a woman who wants to be a mother, who was excited about this pregnancy, who wants to try again and have a baby in the future, who wants her to carry this all the way to term, to put the future of her fertility in question. And for what? This is someone who is not right in the head. Yeah. And
Kim,
I'm sick about it. I'm really sick about this case.
You may recall we had a discussion about the whole question of in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
And my suggestion to you and to our listeners that that's what the Republicans are after. They don't want a woman to have the right to reproduce. They don't want medical procedures. And this is what is so appalling to me. Mm-hmm. And may I make a prognostication? And that is that the American people in November of 2024 will rise up against the Republican Party that advocates these kinds of policies. I believe that. We've seen it in 7 separate states, including a state like Kansas, which is very conservative, rock-ribbed Republican. And thank God, Republican voters seem to have more of a heart and more of a conscience than many in the Republican leadership. By the way, they're talking about the fact that if Trump were to be elected president again, that Ken Paxton could become Attorney General of the United States.
How horrifying. That's horrifying. It should be horrifying to every woman. I wonder if Republicans are scared about this issue. If they see something like Paxton coming out and basically saying, doesn't matter what the judge just said in this case, don't do it or I'll come after you. If they look at that, and especially the people of Texas, and they think that this is what they voted for and that this is what they want. Or if Republicans in general are scared about something like this, thinking these are the people that are going to lose the election for us.
You know what I realized, Kim? The Republicans who understand how dangerous this is refuse to speak out.
Yeah.
They're afraid of retribution from Donald Trump and the Ken Paxtons. They won't speak out. And so we have to rely on the fact that let the Republican Party make all of these mistakes, because when the voters go to the polls, they will repudiate that. The problem is, if you don't have the courage to speak out in the face of this kind of tragedy, well, I don't know whether I can respect you. But at least when you go to the polls, they'll vote the right way. That's the lesson Republican leaders need to understand. And can you imagine the new Speaker of the House of Representatives who embraces all these conspiracy theories and, by the way, is adamantly pro-life? This is the man who is, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency of the United States of America.
Yeah, we're in trouble. This is awful.
Hopefully we're not. And you want to know why we're not? Because you're on the air. Nikki's on the air. Mark is on the air. I'm on the air. We have the ability to influence what people think. The trick is to have a wide enough range. And that's why if you don't subscribe to the Nikki Maduro program, you should.
And thank you for clicking the like button, and thank you for clicking the subscribe button as well. I appreciate it. I don't know if we've had a chance to talk to you about George Santos becoming the sixth person ever to be booted from Congress. The fallout has been amazing. He's taking a page from Trump. He's like Trump Jr. I vow retribution against everyone who was against me. What is happening? Where this is a person that gets our attention and still gets our attention even right now.
George Santos is a crook and he's a liar. And I can say that because that's what the congressional report, a bipartisan report of Democrats and Republicans, concluded. He did not run honestly. That is to say, he ran not revealing who he was, not revealing what he believed. He even claimed to be a Jew. Do you know that?
Yeah, I know.
And then he claimed that his mother was a victim of September the 11th. And, the absurdities go beyond measure. If I had been a member of Congress, I would have voted to remove him because his own district wanted him out. The battle to succeed him is going to be interesting because one of the candidates who is running is an election denier. I mean, these are critical issues, but remember, the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives primarily because of those districts in New York, and George Santos was one of them. More interesting for me as someone who counts numbers, you have two critical Republican votes that are now gone. Santos is gone, and Kevin McCarthy will be gone before the end of the year. That means the Republicans have a 3-vote margin in the House of Representatives. That is very tenuous, and I will stick my neck out and I will make the prediction that the Democrats will take the House of Representatives in the fall, and that Hakeem Jeffries will become Speaker of the House. By the way, they have just begun to go after Hakeem Jeffries, and he has a relative who was problematic, and they're going to go after him on the basis of his relative. I was thinking I could teach a class if we had all morning. I could do it in an abbreviated fashion of presidents and political leaders who have been embarrassed by their family.
Yeah.
Everybody here remember Billy Carter or Don Nixon,
Clinton's brother. Right. Yeah.
You can go on and on.
These charges, speaking about family members, these charges against Hunter Biden could potentially bring a penalty of 17 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems so heavy. And it's, as you say, that the real target here is President Biden. But you wonder, here's a man who has faced the death of his children more than once in his life.
He's lost 2 children to the auto accident and then
and cancer.
A third because of cancer.
Brain cancer, right. And so you have a man who's, probably willing to go beyond lengths that other people would go to protect their son or their child, especially because he knows the extra spotlight and pressure put on someone for just being a relative of someone in power. And so I worry that there's pressure being applied to President Biden. If you don't run again, we'll dismiss the case, or if you don't run again, we'll back off, that type of thing. I worry about that, if that is even a possibility here.
I think anything is possible. I don't know whether Joe Biden in the end will stand as a candidate. I presume that he will because he's saying that he will. In fact, he gave a very revealing interview saying if Donald Trump were not the most likely opponent, he's not sure he would have run. But he believes he can defeat Donald Trump as he did before, resoundingly, in a legitimate election.
Yeah.
But, all that's his speculation. All I can say is I don't care how many years he is sentenced to prison if Hunter Biden is guilty. If there is a guilty verdict, let the guilty verdict be achieved. And let's remember, this is a man who has had severe medical problems. Does anybody out there understand what addiction is? Do you understand that you can do very dumb things when you're an addict? That deep down inside, Hunter Biden must be so remorseful for what he's done to his father. But when you are an addict or a recovering addict, sometimes it's very hard to admit it. Some of the best counselors that I know dealing with drug addiction are people who were themselves addicts, who understand the implications. And so this, to me, look, if we can just shift for a second to the Sandler family and the question of whether they will be held liable for something that they did in terms of opioids and addiction, and the Supreme Court is going to decide it. Of course they should be nailed. I don't want them to go to jail, but they should be stripped of their money. Their money should be sent to their victims. It's, to me, a very clear case, but that will be something to witness when the Supreme Court sometime in the coming months issues their verdict on that. But I have great sympathy for Hunter Biden. I've read his book. By the way, I read his father's book about the death of Beau. The worst nightmare, my mother used to say to me, that she could imagine would be to have a child predecease her.
Right.
Kim is very close to her 2 children, and they're wonderful kids. And that's probably your greatest nightmare. It's the same with me. If anything happened to Samuel or Joel, I don't know how I would get up in the morning, to be very honest with you. And so I understand what Joe Biden is going through. To lose a daughter, to almost have 2 sons killed in the same accident, to have your wife killed. Can you imagine the anguish that one? So I'm not saying let Hunter Biden off. Quite the contrary. If he's guilty, let him be punished. But don't hold Joe Biden responsible. Oh, influence peddling. You're going to raise the question of influence peddling, some of you, and that's what Sean Hannity does. If there was influence peddling, nail him. Nail Joe Biden for that. Of course you should. I would say that about any president. Oh, wait, Donald Trump's kids, Donald Trump's children, the billions they've made out of Saudi Arabia. I mean, should they be held responsible? And give me a break. Let's be consistent here.
I love this comment from Mario, who says, are Republicans really against tax cheats? If they are, I know a guy they should look at whose last name is Trump. It's just that there's so much, well, you did this and you did that. It's totally hypocrisy. And I don't know, does everybody see that or not?
No, because one of the things, having been a talk show host for almost 3 decades, that I realized is people see things through the filter of their own experience, what they want to believe. And some of you will recall my saying very often, don't confuse people with the facts. And unfortunately, I was with a Trump supporter the other day, an old and dear friend. I have the highest regard for her. She's probably listening when this is put up on my podcast. She believes that Donald Trump is pure as the driven snow. Oh, he may have made some mistakes, but he's an honest guy. But those Democrats, Joe Biden, corrupt. And there is no rational way to change the minds of people who have a preconceived notion. It's a shame. And we're going to see this, I think, in this election more than any other election in our history, because we will have artificial intelligence involved.
Yeah.
We will have campaign ads that are ridiculous. We have a partisan media, more partisan than it has ever been. And we are going to hear it from the various networks that aren't really networks. They're propaganda machines that are going to focus on these things. So I suffer, Kim, from low blood pressure.
I know. You're going to watch Fox anyway, right?
Yeah. I cannot begin to tell you. Look, I listened to Ramaswamy the other night. This man, who is one of the last 4 or 5 people standing.
And you think, how did he even end up on that debate stage? It's crazy.
Money.
Wow.
Money. But he believes in all these conspiracy theories. And do you know what really bothered me? Okay, here's my knock at CNN. On, I think it's Wednesday night, they're going to have a town hall with Ramaswamy. I mean, give me a break, for heaven's sake.
No.
I was almost tempted to run for president myself so I could get a town hall and be able to talk for an hour of free time on television. I mean, it is so absurd, and that he is given credibility. despite what he did in this last debate, which, by the way, nobody listened to because nobody could find it. It's just, to me, perplexing. But I understand Ramaswamy's strategy. If something happens to Donald Trump, he believes he's the alternative.
Well, it's Nikki Haley that's rising in the polls. It's Nikki Haley that looks to be the one, the next one after him.
Just
if he should
wait.
fall away, which you don't think he'll stay?
Wait,
Yeah.
Kim McAllister, when she really emerges and Donald Trump starts blasting her.
Oh, yeah.
Just wait. That's from My Fair Lady. We should play that song.
She's a
You
nasty
can't play
woman.
it.
Yeah.
So these are the real concerns that I have. And I want to say it one more time, and then we can move on to the next subject. I was a Republican when the Republican Party stood for something.
Mm-hmm.
This Republican Party is a tragic manifestation. When Donald Trump Jr. said on the ellipse on January 6th, it's no longer the Republican Party, it's the party of Donald Trump. I regret to say he was right. And that's horrifying.
This is a natural place to end this interview, but I don't want to, because I have a question from our rabbi in the chat that I did want to talk. It's something you and I were just talking about off the air, and I would love to ask you that question, and I want to talk about Hanukkah. So are you game to stay a little longer?
Of course.
Okay.
I'm your servant.
You're so nice.
With or without your husband's chocolate cream pie.
Let's talk about what Brian says here. He says, please ask John about the 3 presidents of our universities from yesterday's news. You and I have, because I listened to what you had to say about what they're calling for, and you're upset about it. But and Brian didn't like that I said this yesterday either, but I feel like the presidents of these universities, Harvard, right, UPenn, these are people that should be standing up for freedom of speech, for the freedom of people to express themselves, not for bad things to be done to people, or, there should be steps taken to make people feel safe on campus. And I know there's a thin line between saying that, you want something bad to happen to someone and actually doing something bad to someone. But I struggle with the American right to speak your mind, even if that means that video of you from, speaking your mind and saying awful things in front of the campus means that an employer will see your face and not hire you, because that's a natural consequence. But for us to restrict the right of people to speak, I struggle with that, even if I personally find what they're saying awful.
First of all, in the interest of full disclosure, Brian is an old friend.
Okay.
I just saw his name posted here.
Yeah.
I've known his family. I knew his father of blessed memory. And I have the highest regard for Brian. And Brian, you asked a good question. Yeah. Can you imagine, Kim, if I asked you whether you thought genocide against Jews was permissible? 3 presidents of universities would not denounce the idea of genocide against Jews.
Well, I heard the president of Harvard say the idea of what they're saying is awful, but limiting the right of them to say it is not something she's prepared to do. So she did say that she didn't like what they were having to say. But is that what you mean, or no?
No, not at all. I believe they have the right to say it. When I first heard the expression, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, my son Samuel was maybe 10 years old. I used to take him to rallies so he could hear this stuff. And I explained the river is the Jordan River, the sea is the Mediterranean Sea, and what's in between is Israel. And my little son looked at me and said, who's not so little anymore, looked at me and said, you mean they're calling for the destruction of Israel? I said, that's right. And they have a right to do it. I would never limit their right to do it. But I'll tell you, when a president of a university refuses to condemn the idea of genocide against Jews, that's not freedom of speech. That's downright stupid. Of course they should have. All 3 of them. MIT, Penn, Harvard. There should have been no hesitation. If they had said genocide against Jews is absolutely unacceptable, but we defend the right of freedom of speech, that would have been fine. But that's not what they said. What they didn't do was condemn the idea of genocide against Jews. That's what was horrifying. And that's the penalty they're paying now. And the president of Harvard this morning issued a statement. I heard it just before we went on the air, saying that she regretted what she'd said. She was sorry. A little too little, a little too late. If this had been Black Lives Matter and a president of a university said what those three said, all three would have been fired, no matter what. Well, let me tell you, the problem of the world, I believe, and this is a quote from Eric Hoffer, the great longshoreman philosopher who I had the pleasure of knowing. Eric Hoffer once said, the problem of the world is they expect the Jews to be the only real Christians in the world. Let me assure you, Jews are not going to turn the other cheek. And if presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn do not have the courage and the responsible sense to condemn the idea of genocide against Jews, they don't deserve to have their jobs. And it's just that simple. Freedom of speech, yes, I believe in it. If somebody told me, well, in France, they banned pro-Palestinian demonstrations chanting from the river to the sea. And I publicly said, that's terrible. These people have to be able to speak. I used the analogy Hubert Humphrey used at the Democratic National Convention in 1948. He said, let them say what they want to say, these segregationists. Only when you expose their darkness to the bright light of exposure will people understand. If the presidents of Harvard and MIT and Penn had simply said, we condemn genocide against Jews, period, they could have gotten away with saying, but we believe in freedom of speech. But they didn't do it that way, Kim. They didn't say that they condemn genocide. And you know why there's a reaction? Because they didn't say it. And that's their problem. And
Randy,
that was their mistake. And even if they survive this scandal, they will be ever marked with not having condemned genocide against Jews. One other quick reflection. I am a Jew. I lost family in the Holocaust. My father lost his job at Halle-Wittenberg University, and you can read the article I wrote on it about my trip to Germany. But the important thing was not what happened in 1933 when my father lost his job. The problem was all of his friends, the people he knew at the university, were silent. They did not speak out. And the resulting action was the Shoah, the Holocaust, the destruction of millions of people for no other reason but that they were Jews. Well, we have learned a lesson, and I say we collectively, Jews, have learned a lesson. We will not allow this kind of thing to take place again. And may I tell you, I'm the most rational of people, Kim. But you and I have talked about this, and you know that when it comes to this question of Jew hatred, I will brook no question. Can you imagine 3 university presidents with PhDs, leading institutions, not condemning genocide against Jews?
Well, Randy says that's not what happened. Randy says the presidents were not asked about free speech. They were asked if that speech violated codes of conduct regarding harassment.
Go back and listen. The question posed by Congresswoman Stefani, who I'm no fan of, by the way, was, are you willing to condemn genocide against Jews? And you know what they all said? Well, it depends on the context. They'd all said pretty much the same thing. Let me tell you, genocide against Jews isn't a matter of context. It ought to be condemned roundly. And I would suggest respectfully to the listener who just said that, go back and listen to the questions Stefanik posed, because that's the problem.
A couple comments from Sam, and I've often thought I would love to bring Sam on and have him on the screen next to you and have you guys have a passionate yet rational discussion of everything, of what's going on with Israel and Hamas. But let me read 2 things that Sam has said, and then I would love to hear your response.
Sure.
Sam writes, from the river to the sea also means one state solution for all 3 religions to live equally, peacefully, and democratically. So he disagrees with what you're saying as far as the destruction of the state of Israel.
May I answer, Sam?
Let me
a second. Let
me throw one more up here.
Wait. You'll do it, but let me answer this first. Sam,
sure.
There is only one state in the Middle East in which Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Baha'i all live together peacefully.
Right.
That state is Israel. It is a democratic, secular state. There is no discrimination. You cannot find any Arab state, any Muslim state, where that situation exists. Take a look at what happened in Lebanon. Take a look at what's happened in Egypt to the Copts. I can go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
Israel is a democratic secular state. What is meant by that is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It means the elimination of Israel. There's no spin that can be put on that other than that. And when I hear people say, one other point, when I hear people say, well, you have to end the Zionist occupation. Sam, wouldn't that be the next thing you'd say? But they say the Zionist occupation, which began 75 years ago. 75 years ago is 1948. And that's Israel. That's Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel is not going anywhere. I agree with Sam that there should be a way to achieve national identity and national liberation for all peoples. My hope is that at the end of this conflict, the Palestinians will have the courage to rebuild their leadership and create a leadership that will live side by side with Israel. And let me just point out, I've served on the board of Interns for Peace, which is a group that works in Arab villages in Israel. I've been on the board and I helped found something called Hand in Hand, where Jewish kids and Arab kids go to school together. I believe in peaceful coexistence. But if someone says to me a one-state solution, neither the Palestinians nor the Israelis want that. They want two states living side by side in peace so they can each have national expression. But from the river to the sea, the explanation is clear. No Israel. Next question.
Sam also writes, do you condemn personally the genocide against Palestinians? We just heard you talk about university professors not condemning the genocide against Jewish people. I mean, personally for me, I condemn genocide against anyone, right?
Yeah.
But this is the
Let
problem. I feel like there has to be a place where someone like Sam and someone like you can meet and agree.
Okay, let me clarify. Israel is not committing genocide. Let me explain to Sam and to our listeners what genocide is. Genocide is when you round up people and you slaughter them, as the Nazis did to the Jews and the gypsies and homosexuals. You exterminate them. That's what genocide is. If Israel were committing genocide, there wouldn't be a Palestinian alive. Do you understand that? This is not genocide. I'll tell you what this is. Yesterday was December the 7th, when the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. That's what Franklin Roosevelt said. And what did he say in his speech on December 8th? Mark this day. He said, we will wipe these people out. We will go after them. We will defeat them. And Israel is saying very clearly, we're going to defeat them. Now, what would you do? And this is the problem America faced in World War II. When we bombed Dresden, when we bombed Berlin, innocent people died. We did it in order to purge Germany of Nazism. And in Japan, the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and then on Nagasaki, we killed innocent people.
Yeah, we did.
But we had a determined goal, and that was to ensure the survival of Western civilization. We were determined to do that. The Israelis have no problem with the Palestinian people. If they did, they would have exterminated them years ago. So when I hear somebody talk about genocide or extermination, they better define their terms because they don't know what they're talking about. What Israel is doing is fighting for its very life. The Hamas covenant calls for the destruction of Israel, 100%. And so all I can tell you is this is something everybody needs to consider and think about with great care. Let's define our terms. Genocide is not what Israel is doing.
Lori writes that she thinks you may be being a bit disingenuous, that Israel was intended as a secular democratic state. She said, I think it effectively is not. In 1972, Arabs in certain areas had to carry identity cards. She said she was there.
Every Jew carries an identity card in Israel. We don't have national identity cards here. In Israel, everybody has a national identity card. And of course, when you are struggling to preserve your society, I'm not being disingenuous at all. Israel is a secular democratic state. It is true there is a Jewish majority, but don't be confused. Jews in Israel are not a religious group.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. They are a country that has a Jewish majority, but Jews are a civilization. History, language, literature, art form, religion, philosophy, land. That's what constitutes a civilization. This is not a religious war, and it shouldn't be viewed as a religious war. It should be viewed as a struggle for national identity. Hamas, sadly, identifies itself as a religious movement.
Right.
And they want Islamic domination. That's what radical Islam suggests. And so I would respectfully disagree. You cannot find another nation in the Middle East in which freedom of religious expression is guaranteed. In Israel, it is guaranteed. Muslim, Christian, Jew, Baha'i, Cicerone, you name it. They have the right to believe what they want. This is a war, unfortunately, and I say it with some regret, that Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and those who want a radical Islamic society, that's what they want.
Yeah.
That's what they're determined to accomplish. And the Israeli response is no less than what any nation would do in protecting itself. What's very interesting, Kim? I just want to throw this out. All these resolutions being passed condemning Israel and calling for a ceasefire. None of these resolutions, not a single one, condemns what Hamas did on October 7th. Not a single one.
But
and when you propose that as an amendment,
is that whataboutism?
No.
This is what I feel like. Someone will say tell you an awful story of what happened to pick a side, to a Palestinian boy who didn't want to have his brother who had died in the fighting carried away. And so he tried to climb into the body bag, right? So then we hear this horrible story and our hearts bleed for this young child who's undergoing this awful thing. And then someone will say, but what about the people that are taken hostage and them being attacked in a sexual way or what all. So it's like this bad happened. And then they throw out, well, this bad happened to this person.
But it's not whatism. Let me explain. The United Nations has yet to condemn what happened in Israel on October 7th. I am telling you that in city councils, when amendments are made to the resolutions, asking that Hamas be condemned for what happened,
right?
It never passes. And more than that, you talk about sexual violence. Hamas used rape as a method of war.
That's what I'm referring to.
Do you know how long it has taken for people to really speak out? In fact, Congresswoman Jayapal, the head of the Progressive Caucus,
right? Yeah.
I listened to that interview. I was appalled.
I was too, because it was a case of whataboutism. She's directly asked more than once, what her opinion is on the use of the sexual attacks in this case. And what she did was a whataboutism. Well, what about this? Instead of tackling the issue at hand. But it happens on both sides where
it doesn't. That's it.
We can't look at it and go, should there be a ceasefire? And instead of answering the question of a ceasefire, we turn around and go, well, look what happened on October 7th.
No, but Kim,
what we can't look at is, well, what's happening right now with this fighting?
Kim,
and do we want the fighting to stop?
You are talking about a moral equivalency. I reject that out of hand. It isn't who suffered more. Mm-hmm. It is the understanding that Hamas committed an atrocity and it ought to be condemned. We need to understand that Israel is now fighting for its very existence. Does anybody point out that Hamas puts its headquarters under hospitals, in schools, in mosques? What is Israel supposed to do? Are they supposed to just sit there and take it? And by the way, where is the world? How come the world hasn't condemned that? This isn't a matter of relativism. You fight when you have to. I know many Israeli soldiers who regret beyond words and who publicly say it. Has anybody repudiated what Hamas did? And it's not them and us and back and forth. It's a question of, goes back to the question, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's a call for the destruction of Israel.
Yeah.
There's no equivocation about it. It's very clear. It's very precise. I want you to know, I described Jew hatred And you will recall when people were still talking about anti-Semitism, I talked about Jew hatred, both on KGO and with you and with Mark Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like shingles. Shingles can be a quiet, you don't feel a thing, and then all of a sudden it breaks out and
It lives under the
causes great pain.
surface. Right. Mm-hmm.
That is what Jew hatred is.
Yeah.
It's under the surface, it's real, and I can give you personal experiences, but I don't want to confuse the issue. I just want to be clear. This is not a matter of moral equivalency. Of course, what is happening in Gaza is shameful, but that's not Israel's fault. Hamas embeds themselves in civilian areas on the premise that they'll be safe. And you can't be safe when you do that. Yeah. And let me point out, that was America's position in World War II. When we went into Germany, when we went into Japan, we did what we had to do in order to ensure the survival of our civilization. So I don't accept the idea of moral equivalency, but I do regret, and I often have quoted Golda Meir, the late Prime Minister of Israel, who said, we can forgive the Arabs for killing our sons. We cannot forgive them for making us kill their sons. That's the key. There is a genuine regret in Israel for what is happening.
There's so much passion about this issue. I see people in the chat who, normally get along even if they disagree with things, who just, it's just such a passionate issue. So let's set it aside for a moment and talk about Hanukkah, because we're talking about religion and talking about how anti-Semitism lives beneath the surface. And so it's a little bit different this Hanukkah. You and I were talking off the air about how maybe you're not as public with your displays this year, or, you're fearing some type of backlash from people. So this changes things.
Well, traditionally at Hanukkah, Jews took their Hanukkah, the Hanukkah menorah, and put it in their window so everybody could see. This year, there is a real reluctance on the part of some Jews to be too public. I was thrilled to hear the movement of non-Jews to put a Hanukkah menorah, a Hanukkah, in their own windows in order to identify with Jews, similar to the story we know from the Second World War, where in the Danes, all of them put on Stars of David because they wanted there to be no discrimination amongst their neighbors. Do you understand what a sad, horrific thing it is? Going back to the university professors, what's so hard to condemn genocide against Jews? The call for genocide against Jews. Why is that a difficult thing to condemn? I don't understand. I condemned genocide against Cambodians when that took place. I have condemned genocide that has taken place around the world. But I am willing to point out very clearly that a lot of people who claim they care have turned their back on the Jewish community. And that is the reason why Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the United States Senate, stood up last week and delivered a speech, one of the most powerful, compelling speeches. And let me tell you, I condemn Islamophobia. I condemn hatred against any group of people. I have no brook with people who are haters. Mm-hmm. But when you have 3 university professors who won't condemn genocide against Jews, go back and listen to what Stefanik asked each one of those professors. That should be shocking to everybody, not just Jews. May I say, this is not a Jewish issue. This is an issue of conscience. And I think people have to stand together on that. And by the way, you can support the Palestinians. I certainly support the Palestinians. I want them to have peace, and I want them to have freedom, and I want them to have a leadership that will help them achieve that in cooperation with the Israelis. 100%.
Let's get back to what's happening here with the menorah lighting in Union Square. And I thought that was pretty interesting because Governor Gavin Newsom canceled the Christmas tree lighting at the state capitol for fear of violent protests over what we've been talking about. those calling
No,
for a
but lighting a
ceasefire,
menorah
etc.
that pro-Palestinians would come in and disrupt it. Be very
Right.
clear. That's what he was worried about.
Or lighting a Christmas tree, even that there would
Yeah.
be violent protest there. But in Union Square, they seem to manage to have pulled it off.
Well, first of all, I want to commend Rabbi Joseph Langer and his son Moish Langer, who have carried on this tradition. By the way, the Hanukkah in Union Square was donated by Bill Graham, the great rock impresario, in memory of his son, his nephew rather, Abe, who I went to school with, who died of cancer. And I'm glad in San Francisco we were able to pull off the first night of Hanukkah. I hope it continues that way. Certainly, it is something to be proud of. But understand that here in San Francisco, we have had vicious Jew hatred demonstrated in rallies and demonstrations. And all I can tell you is the Jewish community here in this city has been rocked by that hatred which comes through. But here in San Francisco, thank heaven, last night in Union Square, by the way, Kim, did you see the press report of how many police were present?
A lot. Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
One of the most disturbing things to me, and this is not a new phenomenon, when they did the construction on Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco on Arguello Boulevard some years ago, they put in concrete little pillars all the way along Arguello, shaped like the dome of Temple Emmanuel. Why? Because they were afraid that a car bomber would come down Clay Street at full steam, crash into the synagogue and blow it up. That's the reason they put those in. And that wasn't yesterday. It wasn't, it was years ago. This is something people have to grasp. Do me a favor, drive by any synagogue, any Jewish community center, any place where Jews gather, and you will see police. They're not there for fun and games. They're there because there is a real threat to the security of Jews in the United States of America, in fact, in our own communities. So 3 cheers for the Langer family who have put up that Hanukkah in Union Square. And what a shame that the San Francisco Police Department and private security had to be there in force in order to prevent something from going on. And Gavin Newsom deciding not to light the Christmas tree, understand it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim. The fact that Gavin Newsom decided to suspend the lighting of the state Christmas tree because of afraid of demonstrations, because Newsom is pro-Israel, is absolutely, again, a remarkable commentary.
Brian agrees with you and says, I'm watching my back more than ever, but my menorah is visible from my front window.
And mine is visible from our window as well. One thing I learned, never put your head down. Be proud of who you are. And that is the lesson I've conveyed to my children. And I know Brian has done the same thing with his children. And that is part of what it means to live in a free society. I may disagree with you, but I can do it respectfully. Let me give you one other example. Rob from Richmond, who was a regular caller on KGO and big Trump supporter and constantly a critic of mine. He and I have a very cordial relationship. We've agreed to disagree agreeably. We can argue about political issues. And that's the kind of sentiment that we need to have in our society. And regrettably, Kim, when you have 3 university presidents, all of whom have PhDs, who will not condemn genocide against Jews when they're asked the specific question and say, oh, you've got to put it in context. There is no context for hate except to dismiss it, to condemn it. And frankly, that's what we try to do every day.
Mindy says people are being intolerant of each other. Nobody likes what's going on in the Middle East. And I think that's, I hear what you're saying, and you're getting a lot of pushback in the chat, especially about the from the river to the sea thing. And I understand how passionate you are and you feel about that. But we can all come at it from a different perspective and still discuss it and trade ideas and do that respectfully.
If that were true, and let me tell you, this expression, river to the sea, is not a new expression. I told you my son at least 15 years ago first heard it when he was a little boy.
Yeah.
I know what it means.
Portions
It means
Redacted
it's very
says,
clear. There is no ambiguity. There is a
Right.
river, there is a sea, and what's in between? Israel.
Portions Redacted says many people are saying that from the river to the sea means to them that Palestinians should have a safe place to live alongside Israel. They aren't saying it to be cruel. So again,
Excuse me,
different.
it's not
different
alongside.
Is it a different perspective?
No, it's not alongside. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The body that is there is Israel.
Mm-hmm.
There is no talk of a two-state solution. There is talk of eliminating Israel. When you hear about the Zionist occupation beginning in 1948, that's Israel. That is a call for the destruction of Israel, and it can be sugar-coated any way you want. But I'm smart enough, and you're smart enough, and our listeners are smart enough to understand what the true meaning is. I think, I hope.
Yeah. This word genocide is powerful and brings back these horrible images of World War II and what happened during the Holocaust. And it sits like a rock in your belly because you don't want anyone to feel like their very existence is being threatened. And when I hear you speak about it, that is how you feel that people in Israel or Jewish people in general are being threatened, that their very existence is being threatened. And when I look at it that way, I completely understand why someone would want to fight with everything they have. But also, I look at then I see the message from the other side that they feel like Palestinians are under threat of genocide or being wiped out. And so then one would understand why they would
But
fight
they
as well.
aren't under threat of genocide. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, they would have destroyed the Palestinians in 1967. You know, you have to understand what genocide means.
Why
it
do they
means
why
the
do they
mass
call it
destruction of a people.
why do they call it that then? I mean, why explain? I'm asking legitimately.
Because
why
it's a suggestive word. Because the minute you say Israel is a genocidal state or an apartheid state or Zionism is racism, the minute you do that, you cast the debate in an entirely different way. I just can't accept that.
Yeah.
Zionism is not racism. Zionism is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Genocide is clearly understood. We saw it used during the Nazi years, and we saw it in Cambodia. We know what genocide is. And as for the question of mass murder, we know what that means too.
Yeah.
Somebody explain to me. I mean, I'm really concerned how it is that the United Nations, the General Assembly, and the Security Council did not condemn Hamas for what it did on October 7th. How is it possible? Is it so difficult? You want to condemn Israel, which they do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Can't you condemn what Hamas did? Is that something you shouldn't ask for? I mean, I don't understand how people can excuse using hospitals, mosques.
No, I hear you.
Underground tunnels. And may I ask again, and I ask it respectfully, how can someone like Congresswoman Jayapal not condemn rape?
Right.
I mean, if Israelis did that, by God, I'd condemn it without any hesitation.
But it seems like if something is brought up that goes against the narrative of what you're trying to advocate for, then you just squish it down and bring something else to the forefront. And it's almost like that's what she was trying to do, instead of looking at each thing and condemning each thing.
It's hard when you hold a political belief.
Yeah.
Same thing with Trump, okay? Look at everything Trump has done and continues to do. People still make excuses for Donald Trump. There is no excuse for Donald Trump. I mean, I don't care how conservative a Republican you are. You want to embrace those policies, support DeSantis, to support Haley, to support someone else. But to dismiss from the idea of what Donald Trump has done and not confront it? Okay, let me be clear. There is a certain amount of hypocrisy which exists in the world. But Jews have learned a lesson, Kim. Jews are not going to lie down and be slaughtered. It simply isn't going to happen. It happened. It's happened too often in Jewish history. It's happened in the Holocaust. When the Soviet Jewry movement began, and there are a lot of people listening who remember I was one of the leaders in the local Soviet Jewry movement, the National Soviet Jewry movement, we protested for the right of Jews in Russia who were being persecuted horrifically to be released, to go where they wanted. Well, about 1 million came to the United States. About 1 million went to Israel. And about 1 million remain in Russia. Some others went to Europe, of course. I had no problem standing up for that. If you see genocide, and I mean mass murder intended as mass murder, you condemn it. Israel is not committing genocide. It's simply not true. Remember the definition of genocide. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, there would not be a Palestinian alive in the Middle East. Pure and simple.
So this conversation that we're having it reminds me of what would happen off the air at KGO. We would go on the air, we do news, we do talk, and then when the commercial breaks happened, this would be our back and forth, and we would talk, and then back on the air we'd go and talk about something different. I'm grateful to have this time with you and to put things in the comments in the chat to you and to get your reaction, because I'll often read things and think, I wonder what John Rothman would have to say about that.
May I just answer one other question before we go? I know we have to go. You have other guests. You wanted to ask me a question the other day when I was on the Mark Thompson show about freedom of speech. Do you remember what that question was?
I think it was something about how do we balance the freedom of speech with the right. Gosh, no, I don't remember. How do we balance the freedom of speech with the feeling of the safety of the students at the college campuses?
Let me tell you, when the Nazis, or as I call them, the Nutsies, marched in Skokie, Illinois, in a community that was primarily made up of Holocaust survivors. Many people condemned that. I didn't. I said, let them march. Let them be seen. I feel the same way on college campuses. If they want to shout from the river to the sea, Palestine free, let them shout it. I want to know who they are. I have no problem with freedom of speech. I think you have to be accountable. What's happening to the 3 university professors, it should have been a no-brainer to simply condemn genocide against Jews. That's my point. Let them believe, let them say, let them think, let them feel. I don't mind that. But don't try to hide it. Don't try to obfuscate, and be honest about your convictions. Some of you may disagree with me, but I will never be accused, I hope, of not being blunt and honest about what I believe, period.
Well, it feels weird after all this and after getting your blood pressure raised to tell you happy Hanukkah. But I really do believe it. And I had someone in the chat, I was kind of scroll back and find it, saying, I think it was Doug, who said maybe we should all light a candle, everyone today, and
Amen.
and hope and wish for peace. But I do hope that you have a happy Hanukkah, and I do love you.
And I love you. And may I say, even if we disagree, let's use the example of Rob in Richmond and disagree agreeably. And thank you, and wish Nikki my best. I look forward to being right back here with you next Friday.
And my love to your family, John Rothman. Have a great afternoon.
Especially yours. Yes, good. Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye. John Rothman, everybody. I just love the conversations with him, because I feel like I can put things to him where other people would be so offended, and he'll just look at it and say, no, here's what I think, and here's why I think this is wrong. Here's my perspective. So I love that back and forth in that conversation. Well, we know that Nikki is not here today, and we know that normally we would be getting an earful about a game coming up involving the San Francisco 49ers. So I thought, why don't you bring on a professional to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of sports? And also, I wanted to talk to him about some personal things happening in his life as well. So I'm going to welcome to the show my old friend from KGO, Rich Waloff. Hi, Rich. Can you hear me? I can't hear you, my friend. And you're not muted either. So for some reason, I can't hear anything that you're saying. I don't know. Well, hopefully maybe you can try to reconnect and then we can talk some 49ers and talk about the fact that you're a new grandfather, because I would love to hear your joy about all that. I still can't hear you. Yep, now you're muted. So now you're unmuted and I still can't hear anything you're saying. Maybe you need to reconnect, or maybe it's not going to work out. But if you can hear me, Rich Waloff, thank you for trying to come on the show. If you want to try to reconnect, I welcome it. And congratulations on the birth of your first grandchild. This is really exciting. Okay. Gordon, go Niners, says Gordon Andrews. On that, we can agree, right? Yeah. Yeah, no video. He was going to just do a picture only today. He's kind of running around in between things. So hopefully we'll get him back and we'll be able to do that. But okay, there's a video I wanted to play for you guys because last night we're driving home from karate. Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can get Rich. I can hear you. Hi, Rich Waloff.
Hey,
Hey,
good to be with you, Kim.
Yay! Thank you for
Hello,
trying to
my
reconnect.
Petaluma pal.
Oh, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. You've been living in
Yeah,
Petaluma now for what? How many years? 2, 3 years? Once again, I can't hear you. I heard you for a minute, and now you're gone again. Ah, I so wanted to have this conversation, and now I'm so bummed that I can't hear anything you're saying. Man, and you have some questions too from the chat about Clay Thompson. Randy wants to know if he should be starting or coming off the bench for the Warriors. Gah. Well, I don't know if you want to try one more time, Rich, but what a bummer. Okay. While we wait for Rich and see if maybe we can't get him to reconnect or maybe go by phone and see if maybe we can't hear him, I do want to play you this video because, again, last night we're driving home from karate and my son, who's 9, Jacob, looks up in the sky and we see this kind of caterpillar looking flashing light thing to the point where we pulled to the side of the road and he's fascinated by all things astronomy. So I want to play this for you. And so you can kind of feel the excitement. Here's Jacob last night.
We saw like a bunch of little. It looked like someone was shining lasers into the sky. It was like just little dots in unison, and they were just like moving. Like they paused for a second, and then it was just like they paused and they just started moving again. And it wasn't fast enough for an asteroid, but it wasn't fast enough for a shooting star, but it wasn't slow. But it was too slow for it was too slow for a shooting star, but it was too fast for an asteroid. So I don't know what it was.
Cool, right?
I know, right?
You wanted me to chase it around, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, say bye.
Bye.
So that's Jacob, and that's his excitement over what we saw in the sky. And so then we came home and we searched. What did we see? And it turns out we saw some Starlink satellites from SpaceX. Here's a report from WGAL.
You have been reporting this line of lights that you're seeing in the sky. This happened yesterday. Well, these lights were seen near Jupiter and were not another Falcon 9 launch, but they are connected to SpaceX. What you're seeing is a group of Starlink satellites. So there is an explanation for this. There are over 3,000 of them in orbit right now, bringing broadband internet to nations around the world.
And there it was. And so that's what we saw. And I'm telling you, for a 9-year-old and the fascination with the sky, pretty cool thing. Okay, let's try to see if we can hear Rich Waloff one more time. Hi.
Let's try it now.
Okay, I can hear you shifting around. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm driving. I'm going to pull over so it's not too crazy.
So I was saying you've lived in Petaluma for what, 3 years now ish?
No, it's actually double that, 6 years.
That long. Wow, time goes by. What do you think of Petaluma? Do you like it here? I mean, has it grown on you?
Absolutely. I bought a home here, as you know, and absolutely love the town. Got a great down home vibe with a little hipster flair, so best of both worlds, I think. A little nouveau cool and down home friendly and warm.
And you are really pushing yourself to be part of this community. And I'm grateful for that, because you're not only helping kids, but you're also getting involved in maybe some teaching as well.
Yeah. Well, I was mentoring at-risk kids in Marin County last year for an organization called Side by Side Youth Services. I was on the board of directors for a couple of years, and now I transitioned to doing some substitute teaching periodically here in Petaluma.
Yeah.
Mostly for special needs, special ed kids,
Okay.
which is challenging and moving at the same time, because
Right.
your heart goes out to these little people who are struggling on so many levels, and these teachers, I think they ought to get Purple Hearts. Nobody, unless you're in the classroom daily, has a full appreciation for the commitment and the and the work that they do. It's above and beyond.
Speaking of children, there's a new one in your life.
Yeah. I just saw him
Yeah.
last night. I have a 7-month-old grandson who's
Yay!
beautiful, and it took me 70 plus years to become a grandpa, but hey, here we are. I'm thrilled beyond words. I have 2 sons and a grandson, and he's in Fairfax, so that's awesome, real nearby. And as I said, we saw him twice this week, and nobody really cares about that, Kim, but for us, it's just magical.
No, I think it's really interesting, because a lot of people are, go through this and have these emotions, and you it's exciting, and it's a big life moment, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's life altering, life changing. And I wanted to ask you about it, because I think a lot of people, there's some people that think, oh, I wonder if that will ever happen for me. And then when it does, you have this kind of these emotions that you never realized you would feel about it all.
Well, it's so true. I mean, I was an uncle of 3 nieces before I was a father. And I thought that was great to be an uncle. But then when you have your own child with the love of your life, it's transcendent. It's off the charts. It's indescribable. Ultimate joy, ultimate job, as I used to say.
Yeah.
Then becoming a grandparent, I was curious to see if I would be as moved as I was becoming a father. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's quite as magical and as amazing as creating life with you and your partner.
Right.
But when you see a little of yourself or your wife and your son in this little creature, you realize in a bigger sense how the whole rhythm of life and how that unfolds. So it's beautiful too. But I must say, becoming a dad was more amazing to me than becoming a grandpa. But now as time rolls on and I get to know this little guy as I am right now, it's 7 months, developing a little personality. I'm sure that will blossom too.
Well, he's really lucky to have you as a grandfather. I
Oh,
will say
thank
that.
you. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit of sports, my friend.
Sure.
Let's first start with the 49ers, and then we have a Warriors question from the chat.
Sure.
But this weekend, we're going to have a pretty big game 49ers wise.
Well, the Seahawks have been sort of the nemesis of the 49ers, especially up in Seattle, the last 15 years or so. Very heated rivalry. Lumen Field, the 12th man, the infamous loudest crowd in all of professional sports. But the Seahawks are a young, marginal team with a 500 record, and the 49ers are marauding. I mean, they are playing their best at the right time. Nobody wants a piece of these guys now. I mean, people might think there could be some kind of a emotional letdown after a spirited win over the Eagles. I don't see that happening. And although this is a division game and Seattle will be sky high and the place will be rocking, they can't hang with the 49ers. You saw that a couple of weeks ago at Levi Stadium, 3 weeks ago, when the 49ers, pasted them 31-13. It'll be a similar game, I think, this Sunday in Seattle, especially with Geno Smith, the quarterback for the Seahawks, hobbled with a strained groin on top of everything.
What do you think about Brock Purdy, and has he exceeded your expectations here?
He's exceeded everyone's expectation. Mr. Irrelevant to now perhaps the odds-on favorite to be the MVP in the league. I mean, who would have seen that happening 2 years ago when he was a last guy chosen in the 2022 draft? But watching his ascension, watching his growth and the recovery from that torn up elbow about a year ago, well, January of 2023 in the NFC Championship game, to see him come so far so fast, it is, hard to rival in recent memory of a quarterback, making this kind of ascension to the absolute pinnacle. I mean, he leads the league in passing, yards per completion, yards per attempt. He, as I say, he is firmly in the conversation as an MVP of the National Football League. How about that?
Do you see us as 49ers territory? Do you see us headed to the Super Bowl again?
Barring injury and unforeseen circumstances, and in the NFL, there are so many unforeseen things. Yeah, this is a team to beat. I not only think they can get there, this could very well be their year. Now, we saw what happened a little over a month ago when they had injuries to Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. And I think Aaron Banks, the left guard, was out, and Christian McCaffrey was banged up, and they lost 3 in a row. So a lot of people were saying, this is the crack in the armor. But once they got healthy, they've won all 4 and looked as good as ever or better than ever. Mm-hmm. And now, as I say, nobody wants to take on this team. And by the way, this is bird hunting month for the 49ers. Seahawks, Eagles, Seahawks. They've got the Ravens on Christmas Day. It's all about the birds.
That's pretty funny. Okay, I want to throw this question out because Randy is asking, ask Waloff if he thinks Klay Thompson should be starting or coming off the bench for the Warriors.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And it's so funny. Steve Kerr is conflicted the way Bruce Bochy was 5, 6, 7 years ago when the Giants had 3 World Series and they had an aging team, Brandon Bell, Brandon Crawford, and others who were not living on their laurels, but their better days may have been behind them. Yet the Giants stayed with the guys. Yeah. Sentiment kind of trumped good judgment. And I think Steve Kerr is also giving history its due, keeping Klay on the court, even though for the better part of the last year, he has underperformed, mostly with his shooting, turnovers. Defense is respectable, but he's not been the lockdown spot, catch and release shooter that he was prior. So I would like to see Moses Moody move into the starting rotation. And that may happen sooner rather than later, because I think the Warriors realize you can't keep going to the well if it's dry. And not that it's totally dry, but I think Klay is not the player he was prior to tearing his ACL and his Achilles. And he's pushing 34, 35 years old. And, it's time to recognize that and put ego and history aside.
Is that what happened to the Warriors? Because how did they go from a team that seemed like they were unbeatable and they had all these championships to now kind of...
Well, look, first of all, Father Time's undefeated. Everyone, it catches up with everybody. Yeah. But, you could certainly point to the influx of new talent that is not as refined yet. Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Przemski, all promising young players, but they're raw, and first, second, third year guys are all barely able to drink. And I think Brandon is only 20. So these guys are learning as they go, and they're being leaned upon, and they're showing promise and a good upside. The big thing, you go back to 2 years ago, they drafted James Wiseman, the freaky 7 foot plus center who barely had a whiff in college, 3 games at Memphis State. They chose him number 2 overall, ended up being the worst bust in franchise history. And they traded him to the Detroit Pistons, the worst team in the league, and he can't even get on the court there. Had they chosen differently, things might have, they may have been able to sustain more of an elite level. I'm not going to write them off because they do have the pedigree. Andrew Wiggins has got to step up. Jonathan Kuminga's got to play smarter. They got to stay healthy, and they got to shuffle up the rotation perhaps. They're still a playoff team, and they could make some waves, but we'll have to see.
When I hear you talk sports, you're one of the only people that I think I've told you this before. You're one of the only people that talk sports where it makes me want to listen and pay attention. And I can actually kind of understand what you're saying coming from a non-sports background. But I'm interested in it, and you make me interested in it. And I miss hearing you on the air. Do you miss being on the radio and talking sports all the time?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking to get up at 3:30 in the morning, 25 of my 32 years at KGO. To hit you with 2 minutes every half hour. But I miss the games on Sunday and the 49er action where I was, for 10 years I was a sideline reporter. For over 20 years I was a pre and post game talk show host, and stepping inside that story and sharing it with the fans. I do miss that. I would like to continue. I will break some news. I am going to make a mini comeback.
What?
Mini comeback. KALW is public radio in San Francisco. I don't even know where it is on the dial. But my buddy and former KGO colleague, Suni Khalid, remember Suni?
Yeah.
Well, Suni is a news editor there, and he has solicited myself and Bruce McGowan, fellow Bay Area radio Hall of Famers, and we're going to do a monthly retrospective on Bay Area sports. We're calling ourselves the Bash Brothers because Bay Area sports history. That's the acronym. Bay Area sports history. And we are the new Bash Brothers, Rich and Bruce, once a month, reflecting on events and experiences and people who are in the big Bay Area sports realm.
That is awesome. And the frequency for KALW is 91.7 FM. That's a local public radio station in San Francisco.
Yes.
That is so exciting to me. I'm happy about that.
Well, thanks. And the first segment we've done, and it's going to air in a couple of weeks, we did it on CTE, the brain injuries that so many football players are suffering. So we interviewed Mike Schumann, my former KGO radio and television colleague, and ex-49er, and his experiences in dealing with the league and how they're fighting all the responsibility for injuries and things that they suffered, ailments that they suffered while playing. The league's pretty much saying, prove it, that your headaches, depression, suicidal ideation or whatever, or even CTE, which unfortunately cannot be determined until someone is gone. They can't determine the brain injury until someone's dead. Then I also interviewed a neuroscientist at the Boston University School of Medicine, who was the leading research institution on CTE. And 92% of the brains of football players who were examined posthumously had evidence of CTE, which is just horrible. And the NFL used to support the research. Now they want anything to do with it because that's a long, protracted thing. But the legal liability runs into the billions, and quite frankly, the whole nature of professional football hangs in the balance if and when the medical community can discern CTE in living players, which they cannot as of yet. But that's on the horizon. And that could mean you're 20 years old and you learn you have evidence of CTE. Would you continue playing knowing you're likely to die?
Well, and do parents support children who, I have a son who is a big kid. He's tall for his age. He'd be a perfect football player. Even think of him in high school. That would be great for him. But I would never let him play because I would never want his brain to be damaged. And is that how you feel when you look at your grandchild thinking, God, I hope he doesn't play football, or I hope, this doesn't happen?
Not only hope, I would recommend strongly that he not do it. My younger son, who is quite an athlete, he's a personal trainer now. He lifted for Cal Berkeley's national competition on Olympic style weightlifting. I mean, he's a little mini beast. He had 2 concussions, 6 weeks apart when he was 11 years old in Pop Warner football. And I took the helmet away and he went to play rugby, which was tough, but you didn't have the head injuries.
Yeah.
And there is a reduced involvement of Pop Warner and high school footballs around the country because of parents who are thinking the way you are.
Right.
And I had Dr. Harry Edwards, the noted Cal sociologist, professor and longtime political activist, social activist, civil rights leader, and 49er consultant, tell me a few years ago that he believes the NFL will be over 90% African American in the coming years because white suburban mothers and fathers will not allow their kids to play football.
Wow.
Yet underprivileged kids will more likely want to use that as a way to get out and a means. And heck, if you have a little taste of glory, I mean, your life is for many not that great in these trying situations in the inner city. They would be more willing to take the risk.
Yeah. That comes with a bunch of feelings in my heart that,
Sure.
Sure. Rich Waloff, I'm grateful that you popped up and that we were able to make this work, and I miss you. And so let's go. I'm going to make a commitment to you that within the next 2 months we are going to meet and we are going to have a cocktail or a meal and just chat in person. All right?
Yes, I'll hold you to it, Kim. Great talking with you. Keep up the good work. It's super to hear you and Nikki and John keeping that whole spirit alive.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich Waloff. Have
Take
a great
care
rest
now.
of your afternoon, and
You too.
congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Rich Waloff, everybody. What an amazing treat to have him on the air today. All right. It is, I have so much I wanted to talk to you about today, but that discussion with John Rothmann, I just didn't want to let it go. And now I have Tim Seika. I'm also so excited to talk movies with Tim Seika. So let's bring Tim to the stage. Hi, Tim.
Kim. Hi, Kim. Hi, can you hear me? I'm calling you live from Hollywood this week.
Are you really? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. How am I coming across?
You sound great. You sound very Hollywoody is what you sound like.
Yeah, I attended the Culver City Film Festival where a film I was involved with was being screened. So I'm here in Los Angeles. So in the movie capital of the world, right?
And how'd the screening go?
Went very, very well. It's amazing seeing something that you've been involved with on the big screen. It's like a whole different experience watching a movie on the big screen. It was another reminder that I think whenever possible, people should go see movies on the big screen.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah.
Do you want to share anything about the movie?
Oh, the movie's called Exteriors, and it's a trip. I would call it a triptych movie. It's 3 separate stories and they're all connected, and it's basically, I would say, without giving anything away, it's a drama about relationships. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I like that. I like a good relationship drama, right?
Yeah, I think you would like this one a lot.
Okay, and what's the name of it again?
Exteriors. So watch for it.
Okay.
You're going to be hearing you're going to be hearing stuff about it, let's just say.
Okay. Well, the first movie that you wanted to talk about today, is it Godzilla -1?
No, you didn't get my email.
Oh, I might be looking at the one from last week. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Probably. Yeah. Well, I sent it to you this morning.
Okay.
Well, The Boy and the Heron. We did Godzilla.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's a Japanese animated movie. It's directed by Hayao Miyazaki.
Okay.
Brilliant animator. He's famous for Howl's Moving Castle in 2004, and in 2001 he won the Oscar for a movie called Spirited Away. Have you seen any of those?
No.
Yeah, well, they're wonderful. Anyway,
Okay.
and this is his first film in 10 years, and could conceivably be his last because he's in his 80s. I think he's like 82 now. Anyway, it's in Japanese and English subtitles. That's the version I saw, although his films are available in English language dubs. Maybe those wouldn't have to read the subtitles. But yeah, okay, Boy and the Heron. It's based on a novel, a 1937 novel of the same name. I think the Japanese title is actually translated as How Do You Live? which might actually explain and make a little clearer what this movie is about. Because in my opinion, first of all, it's beautifully animated. It's worth seeing for the animation alone, but it's also his weirdest movie. He's known for his like dreamlike, fanciful, and like notably fantastical animation style, which veers off a lot of times into these like dream-like realms. But this movie is his weirdest yet. It's another one of the director's hand-drawn animated features, and there is something about hand-drawn that I don't think will ever be replicated by computer animation, right? But it's beautifully animated, and it's about a Japanese boy during the Pacific War whose mother dies in a hospital fire. That's how this movie opens. And who discovers this abandoned tower in this new town where he goes to live with his father and new stepmother, whereupon he enters this weird and alternate world where, check this out, he encounters a talking gray heron, some relatives from his past, these bubble-like spirits that are called Wara Wara, I think, if I recall that correctly, which are waiting to sort of be born in the human realm, and several 100,000 man-eating parakeets. And I'm still trying to sort out all of that. But having said all of that, this is a typically beautiful Miyazaki animated masterpiece, I think. There's so much in it to enjoy, and the craft is something that you just have to relish. I think what it is, it's a kind of meditation on birth and death and the life you live between when you're born and when you die, which can be kind of a utopia if you make that your goal. And watching the movie is like watching somebody else's dream in a way. It has a logic all of its own, even though it's weird and doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a very strange, very weird, but a wonderful movie. And it's another animated classic from Hayao Miyazaki. So I recommend it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Waitress the Musical.
Yeah, Waitress the Musical. I bet you your daughter would like this.
Okay.
Being a a local
musical theater kid. Yeah.
I was going to say musical theater star. Yeah, this is on a lighter note, a lighter tone. Well, not really, but on the surface, it's a lighter note and tone. Waitress the Musical. It's the musical version, the Broadway musical version of the 2007 Kerry Russell movie, Waitress. Have you ever seen Waitress? Yeah. Anyway, and this is one of those filmed movies of a live stage production. It's actually opening in theaters today, but it's a film that recorded a live stage presentation of Waitress the Musical, the 2015 Sarah Bareilles musical. And I'd never seen the show. And anybody else who's never seen the actual Broadway show can see it now because they filmed it and it's going to be in theaters. And I'm going to just skip all my pet peeves and gripes about what has become a kind of standard Broadway musical with songs that all sound the same and actors whose diction only allows you to grasp every other word that they're singing. But having said all that, this was an enjoyable show. It was directed by this guy, Brett Sullivan, who also directed the filming of a live presentation of the Disney Channel's Newsies. Have you ever seen that? That's yeah. Okay, well, it's the same guy.
I love the music from Newsies is amazing, and I would say that the musical it's the one case I can say that I liked the filming of the musical turned into a movie, so it's just presented as what you saw on the stage better than the Disney movie. I really like the stage production. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've always been a fan of the Disney movie. And I think the reason that movie flopped so badly when it came out is because it just came out at a time when nobody was going to musicals, right? But yeah, thankfully they revived it for the stage and it became a big hit. So anyway, so Waitress is about a waitress known for her special pies, right? Who works at a diner, but who longs for a better life. And she's in an abusive marriage. That's why I said this is a lighter tone. It's actually kind of a dark story, but she's in an abusive marriage. She becomes pregnant with this abusive guy's child. She has an affair with her gynecologist and then enters into a pie baking contest, which has big prize money attached to it, which she really hopes to win so she can use the money to make a better life for herself. Sarah Bareilles stars as the waitress, and she's very good. She also wrote the music, too, to the songs. And on the surface, it's light and bouncy, and it ends on an uplift. I mean, the ending makes you want to just stand up in your living room and cheer, or in the theater and cheer. But it's also kind of a complicated story about spousal abuse and doing things outside of the accepted societal norms. There's a song in the show called "It Feels So Bad." So no, "It Feels So Good to Be Bad." That kind of sums that up. But yeah, I don't know if it's for families. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge. I have no kids, so I don't know. But I recommend it, and I'll tell you what, Kim, it really does. At least it made me crave pie.
Really?
It just makes me crave pie. I think the pies that they used in the show, or at least in it, were real, because they kept showing, like, they were waitresses were walking with the pies and putting them down, and I'm going, those are real pies.
Yeah.
Those are really damn good looking, pies. I want some anyway. Yeah,
that's cool. All right, I like it. So I'm going to put it on my yes list.
Yeah,
this one I can already tell you this one might not be on my yes list. This is called Eileen.
Oh yeah, depending on how you look at this movie, I thought it was kind of like a hoot and a half, but it's a serious movie, Eileen. It's very entertaining, with a third act twist that you will never see coming. Okay, it stars Thomasine McKenzie, she played Lola in Power of the Dog. That's probably what she's most famous for. She's an actress who really looks like she's 12 years old, but I think she's actually in her 20s. She looks very, very young. Anyway, and Anne Hathaway is in this too, who's really great. And it's about this, I guess you would call it like parasitic relationship between these two women, one young, the other slightly older, who both work at this juvenile detention facility. And as you watch this story unfold, it looks like this older woman, played by Hathaway, is maybe trying to, groom this young girl or seduce her until wham bam, the plot shifts, and you're going, what the hell is happening? And and I love it when movies surprise you in this way, with this kind of skill and misdirection. Yes.
Is it a horror movie?
It's a psychological drama, I would call it, right? And the performances here, Anne Hathaway is terrific in the lead. She hasn't had a role this juicy since Les Miserables, which won her an Oscar, but she's just so confidently fabulous as that she plays a PhD psychologist, right, who comes to work at this juvenile detention facility, who takes a special interest in one of the prisoners there. And you're wondering this is also like a subplot, what's going on. But when it all sort of comes together, honestly, you just kind of want to hold on to your hat. What is this thing? Do you know this thing about all this online hatred for Anne Hathaway? What is that all about?
I don't know. I like Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, me too. I love Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
But there's like this contingent of like online trolls, I guess, that are, I don't know if you know about that. Maybe yeah, just because of the circles I travel in. But yeah, there's this online hatred for her. I never understood it. She's so tremendously talented, and she's not only a great actress, she's a lovely person. And she's also a great singer. A lot of people don't know this. I saw her in this production of Carnival, it's a stage musical, and she also has the singing voice of an angel and the soprano range of an opera star. I think you can go on YouTube and look at clips from Carnival. Just so you can see. No, I don't know why she keeps that singing talent under wraps, but she's a brilliant singer. She's so talented, and I love her. I interviewed her early in her career for a movie called The Princess Diaries. Remember The Princess Diaries?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was just getting started. And I remember when I talked to her, I thought, she was like, I think 19 or 20. She had remarkable poise. Yeah. She was very confident without like being egotistical. And I thought, damn, this woman's going to go far. And boy, has she, Yeah.
I saw her on we used to have the TV in the afternoon on KGO on the Kelly Clarkson show, and
Uh-huh.
Kelly Clarkson does this whole singing medley when she has guests on sometimes, and
Uh-huh.
she and Anne Hathaway went back and forth, and that's the first time I saw
Oh,
her
great. So
talk.
you've heard her sing
Yeah,
before.
she's a
Yeah.
great voice. You're right.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful voice. Anyway, she's like a multi-talent, and she is so good in this. I mean, she's so, yeah. I don't know. I mean, take it for what it's worth. What I said. I mean, if you like these kind of film noirish stories
Yeah,
that seem to be one thing and then turn out to be another thing, and this one, I still can't get over.
that's Eileen.
Years.
Okay, let's talk about now this movie. This is called Poor Things.
Yeah. From speaking of twisted, from the twisted mind of Yorgos Lanthimos, right? This guy, the director, his most accessible film, I would say, is The Favorite. Did you ever see The Favorite? The movie that won Olivia Colman an Academy Award for Best Actress?
I don't think I saw that one either.
Yeah, well, that's his most accessible one. It's a little weird, but this one, this is his weirdest movie to date.
Well, the poster's kind of freaky looking with something pouring out of her chest.
Yeah, well, yeah, something kind of does pour out of her chest.
Oh.
This is a Frankenstein tale, right?
Okay,
That's
yeah.
Emma Stone in the picture, and she stars, and she plays this Frankenstein character. She's actually created. She's a woman. Check this out. She is a woman whose baby that she was carrying before she died had its brain transplanted into her skull.
Oh.
And that is done by this mad doctor, this kind of mad, weird doctor played by Willem Dafoe, who's perfectly cast because Willem Dafoe does weird better than anybody. So it's and what it is, it's basically a tale of self-discovery and sexual liberation for Emma Stone's character. She starts off, she's just kind of like getting used to like all the stuff around her and stuff, and she's just reacting without thinking, but then she grows in the process. And it's a vividly imagined movie. Emma Stone plays brilliantly what is essentially an unplayable part of this Frankenstein creature who's learning about the world she lives in as she kind of walks through it. I can't imagine what this role looked like on paper. I wouldn't even know how an actress would even get into this character because it's an unplayable part. But Emma Stone she gives one of the best performances, if not the best performance of her career.
Wow.
Some might be turned off by the excessiveness and the exaggeration of the film's design. It's really, really out there. And at times it's self-consciously so. Personally, I don't think you can dismiss this movie, and I recommend it. I think if anything of what I've said appeals to people, I think they should, put it on their watch list. I admired it for its aspirations, but I found it, to be perfectly honest, I found it rather cruel and unpleasant and ghoulish in the way. This is another movie I'm just throwing out there. You probably have never seen it, but you should check it out someday. It's a 1932 film called Freaks. It's a Todd Browning movie. It's a horror movie. And when it was made in 1932, the director, Todd Browning, actually used real circus freaks. And it's a very unsavory, very ghoulish movie. And I think Yorgos Lanthimos must have seen that movie many times because the ending is as shocking as the ending in this movie was shocking to me. I thought it was very, very cruel. But I recommend the movie if you're into the weird and offbeat and bizarre.
So it's one of those movies where it ends and you look at each other and go, that was a really weird movie.
Yes, exactly. There you go. You summed it up perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we've got some good things on the list. Of all the three that you mentioned, what seems to be the one that you would ask people to go see the most?
Yeah, it's funny because I like them all in their own ways this week.
Right.
I would say, if you're in an adventurous mood, go see Poor Things. If you're in a kind of just like hey, I want to kick back and enjoy Waitress the Musical. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a fun one. Murphy says, thank you for explaining Poor Things. The trailer was weird. Well, it sounds like the movie is weird too.
Yeah. The movie is weirder than the
Yeah, John says Freaks is pretty sad.
Oh, yeah. It's also John saw Freaks. Yeah, good for John. Yeah, it's not a movie that's talked about much today, but when it came out, I believe it was even banned. It was so horrible. I mean, and shocking. And anyway,
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
So,
okay.
have you seen anything good this week?
I have been watching the most recent installment of The Crown.
Oh yeah, The Crown. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
to get
so
into that one of these days.
it's
Yeah.
really good. I'm catching up with that, and it's been the death of Princess Diana is being
Oh
covered
boy.
this time, so it
Oh
was
boy.
rough. I
Yeah.
knew the episode that I just watched
Yeah.
recently was going to be heavy, where her kids were told of her death, and
Oh
it
yeah.
was, I'm sitting there just crying and crying and thinking, poor Harry. Oh, it makes
Yeah.
you feel, though. It makes you feel, and it also raises questions about what exactly happened and who is responsible for her death.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that was
Yeah.
her death had an enormous worldwide impact. I'll never forget, where I was when I heard she passed and how
Me
she
too.
passed. Yeah,
One of those life-changing moments, and it's
right.
weird for a person that you didn't know or didn't have much of a connection to, how
Yeah,
what they did in the world can impact your life or make you sad for their passing.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I am proud of you for whatever's going on there in Hollywood, and your excitement, and you're living life out there, doing some fun things and going
Yeah,
to premieres and being all sparkly.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for taking the time from Hollywood to come on the Nikki Maduro show.
Oh, you bet, Kim. I guess I'll talk to you ladies next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. We look
Okay.
forward to it. I look
All
forward
right.
to it.
All right. You have a good one.
Thanks,
Okay,
Tim.
bye. Talk to you
Bye.
then. Bye-bye.
So Tim Seika, everybody, yay! Thank you for being here on the Nikki Maduro Show. Some people to thank. First of all, Marilyn, I saw this come through. Thank you for the $10 super sticker. Really grateful for the way you support the show. Doug with a $5 super sticker. Thank you, thank you. And Cindy pops up with a $5 super sticker as well. The show is crowdfunded, and we couldn't do this without you. So we're very grateful for all the support and for the ongoing contributors to the Patreon and PayPal as well. You can find us at thenikkimaduroshow.com, thenikkimaduroshow.com, if you'd like to support us in that way. It is free, though, to click this thumbs up button. Please do that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. I will see you on the Mark Thompson Show. Of course, Mark Thompson is off sailing the ocean blue, so I'm filling in there as well today. Nikki will be back on Monday, so we'll be back to normal for our Monday show. I hope you have a great weekend. I do hope to see you on the Mark Thompson Show, but if not, have a really lovely weekend. And as Nikki would say, go 49ers. So we'll end the show with a little bit more of Jacob, as we usually do. Thank you for being here.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're proud, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.